This year, 2020, has been one for the books. In this episode of Equipped for This, we are going to discuss exactly that, how we equipped ourselves to get through this year, and then what we can do to get ourselves into and transition into 2021. With us today, we have an esteemed guest, Fidelis Oketch, who is director of Worrior Solutions. And with me, welcome him. Welcome, Fidelis.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Michelle.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Worrior Solutions while we kick this thing off.
Hi, everybody. Warrior Solution is a mentoring program I started back in 2013, though it took place 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
uh, to help mentor those veterans transitioning out of service like myself and you.
Mm.
Uh, you remember those days of transitioning. But it's a transition pathways to veterans to get out of their own way, to stop worrying and seek solutions, to seek guidance when there's need be, and also to mentor them to continue to think outside the box, same way we were when we served, to be vigilant in pursuit and to stay focused.
Thank you for that because that work sounds not only important, but very much needed.
Yes.
And throughout this year, did you find that the work that you do was more needed than typical?
This year has been very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. But we are still in it regardless, right? So we continue the fight. So the good about the year is that social media has become a new platform,
Mm-hmm.
heavily used now to be able to reach the masses, particularly to be able to still reach that veteran who is isolated somewhere. You know, Prior to this, I was going into maybe the VS systems and other facilities and platforms just to speak to veterans and speak to veterans' families and many more people within the community that needed, to hear about different challenges in life and how to overcome. Because at the end of the day, it's always about providing a tool to someone on how to continue on, right? So this year has been a bit extremely challenging. It's been challenging in that not everybody comprehends interaction the same way you comprehend on social media.
Hmm.
When I went and spoke to people in person, I think the benefit was greater. They had opportunities to connect, and that connection came through that one-on-one conversation after that speaking engagement, or just a
Mm-hmm.
simple conversation and interaction, and then just it becomes a lot more personable because there's that shared energy in that presence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So versus now, social media is a bit challenging. I'm not saying it's not working because I think I've reached far more people through this year than I did last. Only because again of utilizing the social media platforms. But
Right.
the challenge with that has become this is that the connectivity is not the same. You know,
Connecting to that so as you mentioned that in person, the energy that's felt in person, you're saying that connectivity online has is a little different.
yes,
Yeah.
it's very much different because my way of interacting, my way of even when I do speaking engagement is to involve even the audience. It's more of like an interactive platform, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where I want to be able to engage one or two people so then I know, we are following, we're on the same page, but I also want someone else to be able to share, how they have overcome or what it is they are challenged with or what it is. And then, but the benefit of it is usually this. After the sessions, after that speaking engagement, when you go on that one-on-one session, usually because people are shy, people don't know how to ask questions in masses. Right now as I do presentations on social media, I have sometimes thousands of people watching, but when I say, but people are afraid to ask a question in the open, you know.
So
So how
when you ask, does anyone have a question?
everybody
Okay.
shies away.
Oh,
Yes, because
yeah.
it becomes overwhelming because there okay, I know this or those, there's that sense of security outside in person versus now on social media. You
Mm-hmm.
know, on
Because the
social
world
media,
is seeing. The world is
y-
seeing
yes. So
potentially.
Exactly. So think about a veteran who is so isolated, dealing with so many different challenges, perhaps even dealing with PTSD, and doesn't really do crowd so much. But even coming on social media to open up in that manner is just impossible. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So I find it that challenging. So, but I've also found it challenging in this manner that I sometimes would schedule and say, let's have a conversation, even if it's one-on-one through maybe, this platform we're using right now. It's still one-on-one, but there's that skepticism of like, but it's recorded, you know what I mean? Or it's going to be out there somewhere. So, you know what I mean?
Takes
So
away
it
the
becomes
privacy aspect. Yeah.
right. So in a sense, it becomes sensitive, but it's working. It's working because people are able to now go and listen into those messages. Otherwise, usually they wouldn't,
Mm-hmm.
because they never had access to whatever, facility you are giving that speaking engagement at, right?
They couldn't
So the
physically
messages,
get there
right.
before. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this has given us that benefit of being able to reach everybody now, regardless of what corner of the community you're hidden at, you're still reachable.
Mm-hmm.
Because my message can still approach you. If not during the moment, you can come back and watch it later. But I
Mm-hmm.
get a lot of feedback in that manner. I was not able to watch live because even though I had these many questions, but there's that fear, there's that overwhelming, I don't know how to ask questions, I don't know how to speak in public.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But now on one-on-one, they're like, but I'm glad that I watched, because through watching that, it allowed me to start looking deep into myself and ask the right set of questions, which then lead me to coming to you and having more conversations about this, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it becomes a platform that has allowed everybody to open up in one way or the other. But most importantly, again, being able to reach people that otherwise you would not reach any other way physically. Because people are so hidden and isolated and you wouldn't know where they are, you
Right.
know? Yes.
This tool of social media, because of all the things that have taken place this year, it has allowed for us to reach so many more people, as you've mentioned. Whereas my network is, it's just, it was smaller. Now it has expanded because I'm I've decided to use social media as a producer versus just a consumer. And
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like you doing that as well has reached so many people. So that's amazing.
Thank you.
With uh 2020, how did you approach the beginning of this year?
Thank you. 2020 was so exciting for me coming into it. 2020 was so overwhelmingly exciting in that it was a new journey into a different generation. You know,
Mm.
it's like a new chapter.
Mhm. Mhm.
And for me, that's what it felt with. And I remember my very first show for 2020 was self interview.
Mhm.
you know, and I came up with the idea of self-interviewing that for so long, so many people have these different ideas of coming up with New Year's resolutions and things of that nature. But many of them go into it blindly, not understanding comprehensively the heavy weight of that pursuit, that goal, that dream, understanding and knowing that they must stay vigilant, focused, and just dedicated to the work, right? So people
Mhm.
just throw 10 different New Year's resolutions. So I was like, no, that becomes misleading. But instead of doing that, why don't people start doing self-interview? Why don't you sit down and criticize yourself and then learn about the last year? What were the shortcomings? Because you don't want to quickly move into these new different ventures of dreams and goals and things of that nature when you still have unfinished business, right?
Mm.
Like you and me know, when you start something, you try to pursue until completion, right? We have stories about this that, you take a minute, you detour, but you continue coming back the same journey. So the excitement in that is I interviewed myself and I first set all these different goals, and then COVID-19 came. you know. But it was also the time where I'd just taken off in terms of speaking engagement, going into like the VA and do speaking there and things like that. I just
Mm-hmm.
started in December and things were going so well and I was enjoying it. And
Mm-hmm.
then the whole COVID-19 coming in, well, now you can't really do that person to person interaction anymore. You live alone being in crowds, right? Having crowds as you do that. So, well, we had to go back to the bottom and start re-strategizing all over again. You see? So, but like, you always have to allow yourself to think outside the box, not to dread only on those things that have not worked and continue trying to find reasons as to why they are not working, but acknowledging that there's a lesson or two in that process, right? There was a lesson or two in that shortcoming. You always want to identify a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did, was to identify those lessons and then learning that, oh Lord have mercy, you always have to be prepared. Situational awareness.
Right.
You have to continue to think like a soldier in that you never know what's ahead. You never know what might pop up. You just have to be ready, extra ready, always ready, ever ready, they say it, right? So that really what helped me. I quickly pivoted into, thinking outside the box and re-strategizing and how to restructure now my new venture of
Mm-hmm.
speaking and trying to reach so many different veterans and families. Well, then I had to take it to social media, but I think it's also been beneficial because my first speaking engagement on social media had 5,731 people, watching live.
Wow.
So it was like, oh goodness, the last I was in like 200 people. So that, you know
Mm.
what I mean? So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so that too was more like something that I had to accept and said, okay, okay, okay. So there are lessons in this,
Mm-hmm.
but now
Mm-hmm.
having endured this year, and I've lost friends this year, close friends even. You know how you start a year, you never get to think
Lost
about them.
them. What does that mean? Does that mean just they stepped away or they've passed or?
No, they passed. Some to
Mm.
COVID and some to just,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
losing fight to, to the silent wound now.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
different silent wound, which by the way, now everybody has overlooked. COVID-19 is so overwhelming. We don't even talk about the fallen 22 on a daily basis, veterans
Mm-hmm.
that die
The
every,
veterans.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not even at the capacity of trying to acknowledge that and knowing that, by the way, it's still happening out there. And let me share something, a story about a friend of mine that passed.
Okay.
We went through basic training together, and those days, and by the way, I don't know if this is going to be sensitive or not, but I'll say it because it's the truth.
Okay.
Those days I was the first Black person he interacted with, like in terms of like on that personal level,
Mm.
like knowingly.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but the first meeting wasn't like the way it was. There was some challenges there, but we grew to learn one another as we went, as we continued on that military journey
Mm-hmm.
and we grew to be best friends,
Mm.
like best of friends, but so for that to happen,
Mm-hmm.
it was so overwhelming because you don't expect it.
Mm-hmm.
You do not expect it. So and then for us to be going through this pandemic, you think that was enough threat for somebody else to forget
Mm-hmm.
any other issue. And then you get reminded, wait a minute, even though we are still faced with this threat of the pandemic, COVID-19 or whatnot, people are still suffering out there. People
Right.
are
The
still dealing
pandemic.
with this.
Mm-hmm. The
It,
pandemic doesn't take away the fact that you might be having mental health concerns or challenges. And in fact, because of the isolation that was requested, and requested because of COVID, us passing in along and things like that, you need to be isolated.
yeah,
It leaves you isolated with your thoughts. And so
yeah,
those are things that during 2020 that not only veterans, uh, but others were dealing with. And then I think even some who felt they had taken care of some of their mental and emotional health, they might have seen it resurface during this year, especially in the veteran community. And for
yeah,
those who are not veterans, they probably even just were, how do we say it? They just recognize that it's, oh, this is something that they're dealing with. something that they probably just discovered of themselves or developed during this time. So yeah, that's
And
difficult. Mm-hmm.
I think also this brought so many different other challenges to life. In
Mm.
that there were so many people that were transitioning or even halfway through their transition into getting better, into coping with and accepting who they are and understanding who they are, knowing who they are, and just now starting to grow and learning. And then
Mm.
this whole fear of COVID, the overwhelming fear of COVID came and then just pushed them back into the shell, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So
Mm-hmm.
now they were slowly coming into transitioning into the sunlight, and they got pushed back into darkness. So because now you have this overwhelming fear, oh goodness. Now, when I was already dealing with a silent enemy, now
Mm-hmm.
you're telling me there's another silent enemy that I have to worry about that I do
Right.
not know how to fight. At
Right.
least I was
Right.
familiar with this enemy.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea how to handle this new enemy.
Okay.
So if you're already dealing with the challenges already with the silent enemy, now there's another one just coming. Now imagine how you're being tormented left and right. Because the other enemy allowed you to pursue life one way or the other somehow.
Mm-hmm.
This enemy has completely
Mm-hmm.
isolated you in that you can't even go out to expose yourself in, so then more like in a therapeutic way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being outdoors, continuing to just expose yourself versus being isolated in a room somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Then COVID isolated them back into that shadow, into that darkness, into that isolation, back into silence, and
So
then silence is not good.
so
Silence is
how
not
did
good.
well, so silence is not good, but how did those are the challenges. How did you get through some of those things that you just mentioned? So how did you get through passing of your friends? Was it through your coaching? What are the things that while that happened, did you share with your audience, how they too can get through so that they can be encouraged during the time frame? So we're still talking earlier in the year. What was your message to your Worrior Solution audience?
First, it was like this. When my friend passed, I talked about him during my live show
Mm.
a couple of days before that,
Mm-hmm.
and I mentioned him on the very next show. But that you must check in on your friends. This is always
Mm.
my message to my veteran friends. I don't. You must remember this. You remember how we went through basic training and the whole military career where you have a body, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have that one person that at least knows about your well-being or your whereabouts, some kind of an idea, so then it's easier to track down. Well, that's pretty much the same concept
Mm.
that we need to have, just to have friends to be able to check in on each other. Because what I learned that we as humans,
Yeah.
we always need people around us. You know, you
Accountability.
you always want some other human
Yeah.
in your life. Someone you can share an energy with, someone you can get some kind of energy from when you're feeling at your lowest, or
Mm-hmm.
someone you can go contribute some kind of energy when they are their lowest, right? The whole notion of having friends and this network and community and things of that nature. So
Mm-hmm.
that was my first emphasis. Don't take things for granted. Don't just reluctantly start ignoring and become passive in thinking about your friends that you may think are
Mm-hmm.
challenged or having some different challenges, or even family members.
Yeah.
you know and the lesson in it too was this: just because you always see someone happy and working hard and contributing back to the community and the country and out and about does not mean they don't have any challenges, or they don't have any sadness, or they don't have anything that is tormenting them to that level of just losing a fight, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, because there's just no way of telling.
Mm-hmm.
You look at people and you're like, man, this person looks way stronger than me. Look how, what I mean? You don't know that. So
And that's
stop
good.
assuming, you
That's
know?
good. Yeah, that's a good
Yes.
point. So we have this saying where we say, check on your strong friend. And you know what? Just check on someone just because you care, just because you want to make sure that, your interaction, your passing of someone, it's an opportunity to just let someone know that they're loved and they're cared for. So later on, well, actually, I think right before COVID, or like that first week, we lost Kobe Bryant, the basketball player, and
Yeah.
dear to many of our hearts because we grew up with him, and or we're trying to mimic his moves, and and we saw his family develop, and that hurt so many souls.
It was
And
painful.
it was woo, woo,
I,
I
let
remember
me
where I
tell you
was.
this. It was painful extremely for me because it was as painful as me losing my veteran friend or someone I served with or a
Mm,
family member, in a sense that, you know, it was an introduction for me into the NBA when I first came here from Africa in
mm,
1999.
mm.
And he was the young, but those days was the most hyped player out. You watched him and you knew him. So, and then that was it. That was, and by the way, it was also my very first game to ever watch.
Oh,
It was the Lakers versus the Timberwolves.
oh.
That was my very first NBA game I ever watched. And then guess who bought me a ticket? It was my friend Terry O'Brien that had gone to school with at the University of Wisconsin. You know, so he's the very first person to have ever taken me to a basketball game too. So that right there was like, Lord have mercy. You know,
Mm,
so yeah, target center back in the day.
yeah.
So that was monumental. So comprehending that was difficult.
And
Comprehending that was difficult in that, man, think about how much work you can put in and then just work. And then you work and then you work and then you work and then you work. And then after work, you retire and then it's time to supposedly enjoy life,
mm,
right? To now live.
mm,
And then it gets cut short.
mm-hmm.
So then, which then becomes a reminder that as much as you work hard, you also must continue to live and
Mm,
enjoy it and continue to create those different experiences and continue to build dreams and goals and pursue those things
that's a
and to
good
continue
point.
to allow yourself to feel, that don't fear feeling pain, because feeling pain also teaches you something about you. And then continue to feeling also the good feeling, that
Mm-hmm.
and then allow your mind not to get stagnant in that pain for long. That the moment it goes there and it's not warranting of you,
Mm-hmm.
quickly cut it loose and discard that, because that's not where you belong.
So you're putting
So,
a whole lot of nuggets in there. So not only pursue what it is that you want to do in life, but also allow yourself to live your life and enjoy your life, and to recognize that life can end at any time. Tomorrow's not promised. Even the rest of today is not promised. So if you have an opportunity, which breathing is the opportunity, go for it. And there's no it doesn't make sense in that sense to continue holding on to pain or what was in the past. It doesn't mean it's not difficult, but life is so short, you might as well spend it living. So that's a good point. And losing Kobe, the world felt it. In our home, Minnesota, there was the killing of George Floyd. And that was right in my neighborhood. And to see that, once again, another male of African descent, but Minneapolis being your home and you being a veteran and understanding the tactics of war, a wartime veteran, how were you? And during that, what did you communicate with your audience to help them transition through, to process and transition through? That's a lot. That was a lot.
you know that was a lot that time, not the question.
Mm,
That was a lot that time. Now, for me, I'm going to speak as a soldier, having fought in war, right?
mm,
That you would not treat a prisoner of war like that. Otherwise, then you're in trouble, right?
right.
Because the Geneva Rules of Engagement does not allow for it.
At all.
You,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? So that becomes really, really a tough one to swallow.
You
But
mean seeing that it's coming from an officer, someone in uniform. And if someone in the military has a code that they have to follow, it's hard to see someone in uniform on the civilian side not have a similar code to follow.
For me, I grew up in Africa, coming to America in my early 20s. So my early 20s. Growing up in Africa, when your understanding of law and order is exactly that, right? Law, but also order.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? You know, and then knowing that when you have law and order, it then means you too are not guilty until found guilty, but you're still within the justification of being questioned or whatever the case may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that it has to be rightfully and like systematically, but with at least the with that treatment of humans. And I'm thinking of this as that soldier that fought in war that even perhaps, watched over prisoners of
Mm-hmm.
war, but then not being able, you know what I mean? Like, so it becomes really, really very confusing for me, really, really confusing because now I wouldn't know how to comprehend that because
Yeah.
that's not the training I have. You know what I mean? But it was very painful to watch. It was very painful to watch. For some of us, you are like, I'm sure you have known this during training days and stuff like that, when you're doing some wrestling here and there, and then you have to help, and then, you know what I mean? Like, then you think about this, just imagine of it like that, then continues on like, wait a minute, what's happening?
Mm.
It is not supposed to be that bad. You know what I mean? Like, knowing that if you shot somebody or whatever the case may be, you get arrested and you're taken in and you're still getting processed and stuff like that. But to just get tried right there on the street and everything else right there, and then everything else like, this one just did this here, they deserve this, man, that's just, I don't even know if I'm still able to swallow that to date. But I'm and there's no way to understand it. There's
Yeah.
no way to understand it because just what
Yeah.
does a man
Yeah.
think? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But my encouragement was this: don't hate,
Mm.
because at that moment that's what you want to do. At that moment, the emotions are taking over. The mental is taking over. So the focus now becomes on the pain and trying to understand, seeking justification and things of that nature. But what I learned is that hate, along with the pain, will cloud your ability to focus, or
Mm.
your ability to stay vigilant, your ability to be able to see the enemy coming, your ability to be able to see yourself through, and also not knowing, and then reminding yourself to breathe a second, because they
Right.
sometimes it's just split second between conversations, between you responding, between the anger and the emotions and that hate driving you, and so in that, don't hate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Allow yourself to process those emotions, those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Know that it's there. Know that it occurred, it's happening, and that we continue that fight. But at the same time, that you have to continue the fighting, that your vigilance will make the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you cloud your ability to focus, and then the enemy will it's gonna be the same thing over and over again. So staying focused and vigilant and just breathing, and also allowing the law to take its course, and people in charge, and listening to our pastors and leaders and seeking guidance. You have to go seek guidance. You have to talk to
Mm-hmm.
somebody should you feel the need to, you know,
So you're
you know,
saying while processing and recognizing it, probably a good idea to guidance from someone that you trust and who will
some,
lead you in a direction of positivity. But, you know, you don't have to process that alone. You can get a safe space of someone that you trust their leadership to help explore those emotions and those feelings of something of that magnitude, which you mentioned earlier. You're still processing it, and as am I, and I'm sure many of our viewers, whether they are veterans or males or of African descent or anyone, to see that continuously in this country, it's it's not normal to see death, and because we not it's not normal to see murder. Dying is a part of life, but it's not normal to see that, and we continuously see it because of cell phones are picking it up. Whereas before, it was happening, but it just wasn't in our view. And now that it is, it's a good thing that it's being shown, meaning brought to light. But on the other hand, if we're seeing it, we need some help processing because it's not normal. It's not
It's,
normal.
and that's what PTSD is all about.
Yes.
I mean, imagine how many people got it just from that.
From that.
The effects of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
It's you have that, you have uh the depression, the fear, the anger, you have, there's anxiety of what if, what about, what could be. So yeah, those is major. So get some help to process if
and
you're able to.
this is why where I was emphasizing on the anger, Linda,
Mm.
don't hate, because we continue to have interaction even with our law enforcement, right? In that, if when you do have that interaction, you want to be calm,
Mm-hmm.
and that calmness comes from patience too, your awareness to
Mm-hmm.
say, not the right place or the right time, or this, just whatever the questions are asked of you, just, you know what I mean? Like, because you always want to think of safety first, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So any altercation, any disagreement, whatever the case may be, will lead to something other than what, the intentions were. So I think when you're calm and patient, it allows for you to take that minute to breathe. And,
Mm-hmm.
everybody gets away from that interaction peacefully and continue on. And then,
Well, that's
you
the
go
hope.
and take care of business when need be, right?
Right,
Because I
right.
think that's the most important part for you to be able to go home. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And and sometimes, and by the way, I'll speak to that because I've had a veteran friend who had been in a situation like that where, like, the altercation part. So it's like, no, I know you're a veteran, but I know you're also a trained person somewhere there, but that's not your part. Your part right now is to be
Mm-hmm.
a citizen and to
Right,
to
right,
allow for the other person to do their part also, because they're also doing their part, right?
right.
And hopefully that part goes all peacefully and you continue on, and then there are other avenues to fight the battle through paperwork usually. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
hopefully that's been part of the challenge this year
wait,
is
no, no,
those
no, I understand,
avenues
but
haven't been coming the way. So, but yeah, yeah.
at least I don't want to say that opportunity is there, but that option is there in
Right, right.
in a sense, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, but again, you know, this is where I get to have a challenge too.
Okay.
As someone who was born and raised in Africa and then coming here, obviously, and then having gone through this, so I have two sides, because I know what's like where I come from in terms when you talk
Mm,
about freedom and these many things, and then this.
good
So right,
point.
so, yeah. So sometimes that appreciation comes out as maybe not understanding or maybe not taking it seriously, or, particularly maybe when the black community can say no, 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 no. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it becomes really tricky. So then the question is, man,
Mhm.
as much as I am part of this as a black man in America, yeah, even though I am an African born and raised, but I'm still a part of us. We are all, you know what I'm saying? So how do I then continue also be a part of fighting the fight without being said, but no, 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 you are an African, you don't really understand the fight, the depth of it, right?
Mm.
So I get to think about those things also. So that
Mhm.
becomes like
Mhm.
the debate I get to have with me,
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
reflect, yeah, as you
That's a
challenge.
good point. The duality of having two places you call home, and
Yes.
how the current place you call home has a structure and order that your your original home didn't necessarily have in place. And
Mhm.
so there's an appreciation for the structure and order here. But even though here it's not necessarily it's not perfect, of course.
Yes.
And you know how it sounds like that conflict between this is better than it was, but I need not get complacent in being better than what it was, because our goal is to have it the way it's supposed to be, no matter where we are. So I hear that. I hear that. So later on in this year, 2020, we had a shut in. So stores were shut down. People lost money because jobs went away. Um, Jobs went away, money went away, and businesses were lost. That hurt a lot of people. And
Mm.
even though I'm going to go to housing, even though there was evictions put on hold, in some places that was lifted, and homelessness is raising at just it's just so much. I can see it where I am. It's just increased, and you can tell those who it's just recently happened to, and it's heartbreaking. So to your followers on Worrior Solutions, because you know you're basically helping them talk out their worry and transition through and deal with what they're feeling and the situations that are happening at time. what what how did you share with those who may have lost it all during this time, lost money, lost jobs, lost their partner, lost their home?
You know, Monchelle, I have an idea of what it's like to lose something,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that I always encourage people to do this. Think about worrying, for example.
Mm-hmm.
When you worry, what usually happens? You know, because worrying associates with negativity, in that when you worry, the more you're thinking from the negative side.
Mm-hmm.
You're not thinking solutions, worrying. Worrying, you're always maybe thinking about a justification. Why? Why did it
Mm-hmm.
happen? Why is it happening? Why this pain? Why that? You know what I mean? Like, why? So now you've taken the whole focus away from an idea, you know, from an imagination, you know, from something that interests you that you can actually do to make money, you know, from reinventing and renovating yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you allow yourself to feel, now you bring yourself back to the presence. When you're present, that means you're aware, you know you are paying attention to you. Now you're vigilant, now you're focused, now you can pursue. But worrying takes away from that, because worrying clouds you. You know, so worrying just kind of comes like this. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you're no longer allowing yourself to see the next 6 months, the next 7 months, because you're worrying about, you know, how bad they are going to be. You don't even know that, you know,
Mm. Or
because
how
it's yet
bad it's
too far away.
gotten.
Yeah. So instead of worrying, why don't you acknowledge that that's the issue or that's a problem? Now let's try to strategize. How can we
Mm.
overcome? Who can we call? How can
Mm.
I think? Okay, if this type of business I was doing is not working, how can I reinvent myself? I
Mm-hmm.
was working. How can I become a business person? How can I get into entrepreneurship? How can I take advantage of social media and start selling things online? How can I take advantage of, you know, firms like Amazon that have opportunities for day-to-day citizens that can do, you know, uh, drop shipping or whatnot. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So there are other opportunities there. But the challenge is, though, when you're spending time worrying, you can't be vigilant. You can't think outside the box because you're clouded. You're lost in that worrying. All your energy is gone into that worrying. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that is people can just drop worrying simultaneously and just go into thinking the positive and things like, but it's work, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
first accept, you know, that okay, this is me now. This is the problem. How can we
Mm-hmm.
solve this problem? Who can help me solve this problem? You know, and I'm not talking about problems like COVID-19. I talk more about problems of getting out of your own way. We know that the COVID-19 has, you know, caused the side effects is loss of jobs and financial stabilities and many more
Mm-hmm.
challenges we're, you know, dealing with right now. But how can you not be on the standstill how can you accept and then renovate? You know, the whole notion of hard times don't last, hard people do. You know, knowing that, you know, like I always refer myself to this. You know, for example, there was a time I was laying in a hospital bed, not knowing that I was gonna make it, right? But I'm here. So that's always a reminder for me to know, you know, it doesn't stop. You know, if you continue the fight, you fight. There was a time I was challenged in school. I didn't think I would ever earn a bachelor's degree, you know, but then I added, I'm like, wait a minute, you mean I have this in me? You laugh, you know what I'm saying? But this is,
Yeah.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
the reality of life. And then think about many other fears and things like that, that, you know, worrying is going to bring to light.
Yeah.
And it takes away your focusing on what needs to get done and what you need to pursue and what you need to the responsibility, but that you too must hold yourself accountable one way or the other.
Holding
Because when you,
accountable.
yes, when you do that, it allows again for that journey to keep going. Because, you know, when you don't do that, then you're kind of cutting corners. And then when you cut corners, then the work becomes messy. Then later on, you got to come back and start all over again.
Right, right.
So then, yeah, so patience,
Patience, present, and it sounds like you're saying also you're addressing a solution focused mentality, meaning
yes,
this happened and you go through the emotions and feel it and recognize it. However, you're still here and you have the opportunity to push forward. And people lose. We lose. Losing is in life is a part of life experience. But like you said, pressing through, what can you do to reinvent yourself to transition through? What can you do? So this would be a time for many who have lost whatever it may be, even though difficult. This would be a time to, as we transition into 2020, a time to process and reinvent. So now we're at the end of 2020. We had an election. That process is still being sorted out. There's still many uncertainties as it comes to COVID. There's a vaccine that's coming out. Some people are choosing to get it. Some people are just totally against it, for many reasons. Veterans totally against it because of reasons, and then civilians as well. And well, I guess we're all civilians now, but going into 2020, this holiday season, New Year's is just tomorrow. And so this being the last day of 2020, how do we go forward? So in Worrior Solutions, what are you saying to people to press forward and to not worry as we go into the new year?
That first of all, take time to reflect. You know, because I want you to acknowledge what 2020 has been in that.
Right.
Think about what January was like, right? When you started the journey of 2020. Because when January was, we didn't know about COVID yet, right? There were not those overwhelming challenges or whatnot, but people were very, very excited about pursuing their dreams and goals and different agendas and education or
New
whatever.
beginnings, right?
Right. Beginning, right? Because for many, this was a new chapter, which, by the way, for so many reasons, this has also been the new chapter for many because it's given so many different opportunities, to start different ventures in life, to start different, people are writing books. People are now, everybody's on social media, motivating somebody, motivating themselves, right?
Yes.
But that you should start focusing on things that inspire you, what inspires you. Do you know what inspires you? Not what motivates you, because motivation sometimes comes from outside, but inspiration comes from inside. What drives you? What can you tap into when you're feeling like, your well is about to dry? When you feel like you're about to run out of gas, how can you re-strategize? How can you plan ahead? Think about those days when we were traveling. Say, for example, from Minnesota to Florida back in the days when we were in school, St. Cloud State for spring break. Those days would print out Yahoo Maps, no? So then you know exactly ahead of time, when I arrive this 5 miles somewhere, I have to make this right turn without a miss, because the GPS wasn't there to remind you. So you have to pay, right? But now people are kind of forgetting that life is exactly in that manner. You have to plan it and write it down and continue to check your checklist off. Okay. So it's very, very imperative that this time of the year to reflect and say, okay, what are the checklists that you did not get to check off?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how important was that? So then maybe the vision for 2021 becomes the same pursuit, a continuation of a journey that was a bit disrupted, not to give up and come up with some different innovative idea, you know what I mean, whatever the case may be. But most importantly, that you have to believe in yourself. Because
that's a
when
good
you
one.
do that, it allows you to believe in God if you believe in God. And that when you do that, it gives you the discipline to start studying even the Bible, to start now when you do that, you're present within you, you're focused at you're feeling your presence, right? So then that allows you to focus on those things that you enjoy doing, you know, the purpose, those things that drive you, you know, vision that keeps driving you, you know, because that will give you avenue, give you energy to seek all kinds of solutions and avenue and guidance, whatever the case may be, if you want to make it. Think about being hungry.
Yeah.
You know, I've been hungry before growing up in Africa. I know what it's like to go pick up food from a dustbin, clean it up and eat.
Yeah.
When you want to pursue something you want out of life, sometimes you got to go through the same journey. You know, don't be afraid to go sweep, and then get up and go pursue. You know, remember when we were going through St. Cloud State, the kind of jobs I was doing, you know, but those are what we call the by the vision, focusing on, you know, the mission ahead, mission-based focus. You know, in the military, we have this knowledge. 45 this way you're headed, and that's exactly what you see. You gotta go. You can get blown up 10 IDs on that route, you're not stopping, you're not turning back. You gotta keep going.
You gotta keep going, right?
You gotta keep going, because the mission wasn't those IEDs or those things or whoever showed up in the middle of the road. The mission was far ahead. That's where we are going. Yeah, you all showed up trying to disrupt the journey. No, we gotta get through the journey one way or the other. But that's life. You know, when you put your pursuit in life in that exact same manner, that's it. You know, that's the discipline. You know, do not be afraid to hold yourself accountable. When you hold yourself accountable, you will not learn excuses.
Ooh, yeah, now that's powerful. So we're going forward with a vision, with a mission, with a purpose, with intentionality.
Intentions.
And with the understanding that there is no turning back.
There is no turning back.
Behind us is done. And what's in front of us is what is going to be. And it's in front of us, our hands are in front of us, and we have an opportunity to create that. Well, thank you.
And that, one more, and this is something this is probably one of the first things my father told me coming to America 20 years ago or 21 years ago. Do not compete with anyone but yourself.
Ooh, there's no competition. Absolutely.
You are
absolutely.
You know, you're competing with someone who, wow. You know, what happens if you're at a 12% and you're competing with somebody at a 6% because they look attractive at that specific moment? You just happen to notice them. Yeah,
you'll miss what's for you, trying to match their level, thinking that they are better, or thinking that they're your competition when you're your own competition. Your best today is your competition for tomorrow. You know, so be whatever you did today at your best, do better tomorrow. Okay, you have an opportunity to beat your yesterday's goal. So yes, that's a good point right there. Where can people get information directly from you? I mean, you're here gracing us with your presence, and thank you so much for your time. But absolutely, for people to follow you and to check in and what it is that you do, is there social media? I think you mentioned a website.
Yes, so www.Worrior Solutions. Now, Worrior, and for the most part, I get phone calls or text message from people saying you spell that wrong. It's, you know, Whiskey, Oscar, Romeo, India, Oscar Romeo, Solutions, Sierra, Solutions, Sierra, Oscar, Lima, Uniform, Tango, India, Oscar, November. Worrior Solutions. Warrior comes from a warring warrior.
Worry.
Worry-free zone. That's Worrior Solution. We
Mm-hmm.
call it a worry-free zone. This is a place where we come and interact without worrying. We talk about the subject matters about life, no specifics in general. If you come with the pain, we talk about pain. If you come with love, we talk about love and continue to love.
Nice.
Okay. We're also on social media, on Instagram at Worrior Solutions, also on Twitter at Worrior Solutions. The big crowd is on Facebook at Worrior Solutions. We have a following about 14,000 there, and then YouTube also at Worrior Solutions.
Nice. 14,000 and growing. So there you have it, everyone. You can reach Fidelis Oketch at Worrior Solutions, Worrior with an O, warriorsolutions.com, or on Facebook, Instagram, and was there YouTube? Did you say YouTube?
The YouTube, yes.
And the YouTube. Thank you again, Fidelis. Hopefully soon we will connect and we'll have some more content for our viewers, because I hope they enjoyed you the way I've enjoyed you sharing. So thank you so much. And Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.